Y'all seen that clip? Nah, I ain't talking about no music video or some random live. I'm talking about that footage that dropped last night. The one where they say Big U's son was talking to his pops for the very last time. Man, when I tell you the streets are shook, I mean it. People who don't even say his name no more are speaking up now. This ain't rumor. This feels like confession. In the video, the camera's shaky, the lighting bad, but the voices, you can hear them clear as day. It sound like two men, one trying to be strong, the other realizing strength ain't enough anymore. Folks who saw it said his last words weren't what anyone expected. Not a cry for help, not forgiveness. Something darker. Something that made even the toughest cats in South Central stop scrolling and just listen. And here's the part nobody's talking about. Nipsey's old affiliates. The same ones who've been quiet since the tragedy. The ones who leaked it. Yeah, them. And they're claiming what was said in that moment might explain everything that's been going on since. The tension ain't new though. Big U's name been whispered in circles for years. Power, protection, politics. But this right here, this hit different. This ain't just about one man or one family. It's about legacy, loyalty, and the price you pay when the streets and the spotlight collide. See, everybody want to talk about what happened, but nobody wants to talk about why. And if what we're hearing is true, those last words weren't just for his father. They were for everybody. Buckle up, because what's really going on behind that video is way deeper than it looks. It started long before the video, before the whispers, before the tears. This story been boiling underneath the surface for years. You gotta understand, when folks talk about Big U, they don't say his name lightly. He's not just a man, he's a presence in Los Angeles history. The kind of figure that built his name in the concrete and the culture. To the older heads, he's the blueprint of structure. To the younger ones, he's power personified. But when your legacy gets that heavy, it don't just sit on your shoulders. It crushes the ones who come after you too. His son, everybody knew him. Not loud, not in the spotlight like his pops, but always around. Folks in the neighborhood used to say, he's got his daddy's eyes but not his armor. The kid had a quiet kind of energy, more digital than street. He was trying to mix business with the code, trying to make peace with the legacy he inherited. But the streets, they don't always care about peace. They care about perception, and perception can kill faster than bullets. The first cracks started showing after Nipsey passed. That moment changed everything in Los Angeles. The air got thicker, the love got tense, the unity turned into politics. See, Big U and Nipsey had history. Good, bad, real complicated. They built together, fell apart, and then tried to make sense of it all in a world that don't forgive easily. People started choosing sides. Some said Big U was still the backbone of structure. Others whispered he lost his touch. And through it all, his son was stuck in the middle, watching old heads play chess, while he was still trying to learn how to move. One of Nipsey's old affiliates, let's call him El Boogie, was one of the first to speak up after the clip dropped. He said, "It didn't start last week, bro. That tension been brewing for years. The son ain't hate his pops. He just hated what came with him." Those words cut deep. Because if you know anything about loyalty in LA, you know that legacy can feel like a curse. Back then, the son tried to branch out. He wanted to run his own projects, his own circle, start something clean. But when you grow up under a name that powerful, people never let you be your own man. Every move he made, somebody tied it back to Big U. "That's Big U's boy," they'd say, not even calling him by his name. And every time something went wrong, whether it was a bad business deal or a street misunderstanding, guess who the fingers pointed to? His father. The son started pulling away. Less phone calls, less visits, less showing up to events. Insiders said he was moving with a chip on his shoulder, trying to prove he could survive without his father's shadow. Big U, on the other hand, saw it differently. To him, distance felt like disrespect. He came from a world where loyalty meant proximity. You stay close, you stay solid. But to his son, distance was survival. Then came the leak. A clip surfaced online, blurry, quick, filmed from the passenger seat of a car. In it, you could hear voices. One of them sounded like Big U's son, arguing with someone over the phone. "You keep trying to play me like I'm a kid, bro," he said. "I ain't your soldier, I'm your son." There was a pause, and then a voice replied, deep, calm, and unmistakable. "Watch your tone when you talk to me." That voice sounded a lot like Big U's. The internet went crazy. Blogs ran wild with headlines. Family tension in the streets. Big U's camp breaking apart. Nipsey's affiliates responding to internal beef. But behind the scenes, those close to the situation said the video was only half the story. One person who was there that night said the call was about business, not beef. They said it started with a disagreement over a project, something that involved money tied to a community program. His pops wanted it handled the old way, the insider said. But the son, he was moving in a new direction. Social media, branding, digital investments, the kind of things the older heads didn't respect. It wasn't about the project. It was about identity. Who gets to decide what legacy means in a world that keeps changing? People started noticing changes in the son's demeanor after that call. He wasn't posting much, wasn't smiling much either. One of Nipsey's old bodyguards said he ran into him at a downtown event. He looked tired, man. Not like no physical tired, more like spiritual, like he was carrying something heavy that wasn't even his to carry. And that's what people don't understand about situations like this. When you grow up in the orbit of power, you're born into a war you never started. Folks expect you to move like a soldier when all you ever wanted was peace. A few weeks later, a conversation happened that nobody recorded, but everybody in their circle talks about. A sit-down. Big U, his son, and two close family friends. It was supposed to clear the air. But sometimes, clearing the air just stirs up the dust. Eyewitnesses said voices were raised. Respect was tested. The son said something that made the room go quiet. "You ain't my boss. You just my blood." One of the older homies tried to calm things down, saying, "That's your father. Show some love." But the son stood firm. "I got love. I just ain't got space to live under somebody else's shadow." Big U reportedly left that meeting without saying a word, just nodded, got up and walked out. That was the last time they spoke in person. After that, everything went downhill. Folks in the community said they could feel the distance. No more joint appearances, no more family events. And when the son stopped showing up at local drives and charity functions, people knew something was off. But what nobody expected, what nobody saw coming, was that night, the night that changed everything. It was quiet. Almost too quiet. Late night, somewhere near Crenshaw. Word is, the son had been moving around solo, keeping his circle tight. Nobody knows who he was with, but around midnight, something went down. Gunshots, panic, confusion, and then silence. When the news broke, the city froze. Another young man gone. But this one hit different, not just because of who he was, but because of what he represented. A son trying to carve his own identity in the shadow of a legend. And that's when the whispers started again. The same Nipsey affiliates who'd been silent for years started speaking. One of them posted a cryptic message. He said something before he left, and the city needs to hear it. The message didn't say what those words were. Not yet. But that post lit a fuse under the whole situation. Because now, everybody wanted to know. What did he say? What were those last words that made the whole block go quiet? And just when people thought the story couldn't get deeper, a second video surfaced. Shorter, grainier, but real enough to shake anyone who watched it. It showed a figure on the ground, surrounded by flashing lights, and over the noise, you could barely make out his voice. That's where the story really begins to twist, because those words, those final words, weren't what anybody expected. When that second clip hit the streets, it didn't come through no blog, no media page. It dropped straight through a private page that had been inactive since 2019. One of Nipsey's old affiliates, known on the streets as Lil Bear, reposted it first. He said, "The world need to hear what bro said before he took his last breath." And within hours, it was everywhere. The video was grainy, but the sound was clear. You could hear chaos in the background, sirens, voices shouting, car doors slamming. And right in the middle of all that, you hear him, weak, breathing heavy, but still focused. He said, "Tell my pops I ain't mad at him. Tell him I just couldn't carry it no more." Then silence. The city stopped. That one sentence hit harder than anything anyone could have imagined. Because to people who knew the history, it wasn't just a son talking to his father. It was a generation speaking to the one before it. A confession, a surrender, a message about what happens when the weight of the streets gets passed down like inheritance. The streets gets passed down like inheritance. Everybody had their own interpretation. Some said he meant the pressure, the expectations, the fear of never being enough. Others said he meant the politics, the constant danger that comes with a powerful last name. But no matter how you read it, those words carried truth. Big U didn't speak publicly at first. Not a statement, not a post, not even a quote through insiders. But his silence was its own kind of noise. Folks close to him said he was devastated, locked in the house, not picking up calls. One person from his circle said, you could see it in his eyes. He felt like he failed. Not as a leader, not as a name, but as a father. But the story didn't end with grief, because soon after, more details began to unfold. One of Nipsey's affiliates, who had fallen out with both Big U and the family years back, went on live and claimed the situation wasn't random. He said, don't let them fool you. This wasn't no robbery gone wrong. This been brewing. Too many egos, too many secrets. That boy knew too much. Now that statement set the internet on fire. People started connecting dots that might have never been there, spinning theories about betrayal, about revenge, about who really controlled what in Los Angeles. But one thing stood out in all the noise. Those affiliates weren't talking out of gossip. They were speaking from somewhere deeper, somewhere personal. See, after Nipsey's passing, his old circle scattered. Some stayed solid, some went silent, others disappeared into new lanes. But every one of them still carried scars from that loss, and to them, Big U's son represented something pure. Young energy, untainted by the politics that had split the older generation. That's why when he died, they felt like another bridge to peace had burned. One of them, a man named Doc, told a story on camera that left people speechless. He said a few weeks before the tragedy, he ran into the son outside a studio in Inglewood. They talked for 20 minutes about legacy and loyalty. He told me, Doc said, sometimes loyalty feels like a prison when you didn't choose who you loyal to. I didn't even know what to say, bro. I just nodded. Those words haunted everyone who heard them, because that was the core of it. The son was trapped between honoring his father's legacy and finding his own peace. And when you live under a man like Big U, peace don't come cheap. Around that same time, text messages started circulating online, allegedly between the son and a close friend. They weren't confirmed, but they sounded real. One message said, he don't see me. I'm always just his reflection. Another said, if I leave, maybe he'll finally look at himself. The media ran wild with it, but the truth wasn't in the headlines. It was in the silence from everyone who actually mattered, the people who were really there. A week after the funeral, one of Nipsey's older affiliates, known as Tone, went on a podcast. He looked tired, like he'd been carrying the weight of the city on his back. Look, he said, that man loved his son. Don't get it twisted. But sometimes love in the streets come out wrong. We don't say I love you. We say be safe. We don't hug. We hand you a strap. That's how we were raised. It don't make it right, but that's the truth. His words hit hard because everyone knew exactly what he meant. This wasn't just a family tragedy. It was a mirror held up to the whole culture. How fathers raise sons in a world built on survival, not softness. How protection sometimes feels like pressure. A few days later, Big U finally broke his silence. He posted a single message online. My son knew my heart, even when he didn't understand it. No hashtags, no captions, just pain. It was the kind of post that made you stop scrolling. And still, the Nipsey affiliates didn't let it die there. They began dropping little pieces of a story nobody had ever heard before. About a conversation between Big U's son and Nipsey's brother before the tragedy. One of them leaked a snippet of an old voicemail where the son said, I wish the old heads would talk to each other instead of talking about each other. People started realizing this wasn't just about one father and one son. It was about an entire generation caught in the cycle of pride and silence. Every man trying to be strong. Every man too scared to say he was hurting. Somewhere deep down, everyone knew that's what those last words meant. Tell my pops I ain't mad. Tell him I just couldn't carry it no more. It wasn't anger, it was exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to heal wounds you didn't cause. In the days that followed, murals started popping up around Los Angeles. Faces of both father and son painted side by side. Candles lit, kids leaving notes, people whispering prayers. One message written in chalk said, we don't hate our fathers, we just don't want to become them. The city was mourning more than a person. It was mourning a pattern, and right when it seemed like the dust was settling, a new leak dropped. This time it wasn't a video or a post. It was a recording of a private conversation between two of Nipsey's old crew members. One of them said, if that boy's words don't wake people up, nothing will. He didn't die for nothing. He told the truth before the world could twist it. And just like that, the narrative shifted again. Because what if those final words weren't just a goodbye? What if they were a message, a warning to his father, to his generation, to everyone still stuck in that cycle. And that's when Big U decided to make a move nobody expected. The announcement came quiet, like a whisper before a storm. No press release, no flashy rollout, just a flyer passed around the community center in South Central. Big U's face on one side, the words "Peace Talk" printed on the other. At first, people thought it was fake. He hadn't spoken to the public in weeks, but by that Friday night, cars started pulling up. Elders, young cats, even people from rival blocks showed up. Everyone wanted to hear what he had to say. When he walked in, you could feel the room change. He didn't have security, didn't wear shades, just a plain black hoodie, and that same look he's always had. The one that says he's seen everything and survived it. He stepped to the mic and stood there for a full minute, not saying a word. Then he sighed and said, "You can lead a city, but you can't always save your own." It was quiet enough to hear the hum of the lights above. He wasn't there to flex. He wasn't there to defend himself. He was there to confess. "My son was his own man," he said, "and I loved him for that, but I didn't tell him enough. I taught him how to fight, but I never taught him how to rest. I showed him how to lead, but not how to let go." People said you could see tears in his eyes when he said that, even if he tried to blink them away. He started talking about legacy, the kind that's built on concrete and consequence. He said every generation of men in their world was raised to survive, not to heal. And when a man finally tries to heal, it's already too late. But here's the part that caught everybody off guard. He said he had a message for the ones who leaked the video. "You all wanted to expose something," he said. "But all you exposed is how broken we all are. If you all really loved him, stop chasing views and start changing patterns." You could feel the guilt in the air. Some of Nipsey's old affiliates were sitting in the back, heads down. They didn't expect him to speak with that kind of peace. They came ready for anger, but what they got was accountability. After the meeting, videos started circulating online, clips of Big U embracing old rivals, shaking hands, taking photos with people who hadn't spoken to him in years. One video caught him saying quietly to an old friend, "We lost too many kings to pride." That line went viral, but while the world was starting to see a man trying to change, behind the scenes, the old tension was still there. One of Nipsey's affiliates, the same guy who'd leaked the first clip, went live that same night saying, "You can't wash away the truth with tears. It's too late for apologies." He accused Big U of trying to control the narrative, of turning pain into a brand. That reignited the drama. Comment sections turned back into battle zones, one side saying, "Let the man heal," the other saying, "He's doing damage control." Even local radio stations picked up the story, turning it into a debate about forgiveness and image. But here's what people didn't know. While everyone was talking online, Big U had already started visiting schools, halfway houses, community centers. He wasn't promoting it. No cameras, no interviews, just showing up, talking to young men about pressure, expectations, and how to handle the weight before it breaks you. A few clips leaked from those talks. Him telling a group of teens, "Don't carry your father's fight if you ain't ready for war." That line started trending again. This time as a quote on t-shirts, tweets, and murals. People started saying maybe his son's death wasn't just tragedy, it was transformation. Maybe it cracked something open in a man who thought he'd already seen it all. Still, the streets were split. Some said it was too little too late. Others said this was the first real change they'd seen in decades. And then, about 3 months after the tragedy, another leak hit. This time, it wasn't from the affiliates. It was from inside. A short audio clip surfaced online, recorded at one of those peace talks. In it, Big U was talking to a group of young men, and his voice broke halfway through. "My boy told me he couldn't carry it no more," he said. "And you know what? He was right. I made him carry things I was supposed to let go of a long time ago. But I'm carrying him now." The internet went quiet. For the first time in a long time, people didn't have jokes, didn't have debates, they had reflection. Jokes didn't have debates, they had reflection. That clip changed something. Even some of Nipsey's old people, the ones who had been throwing shade, started reposting it with broken heart emojis. One of them wrote, "Real men apologize with action, not words." Slowly, the walls between circles started to fade. Rival crews began coming to the same community events again. Young rappers who used to throw subliminals in their songs started dropping tracks about unity instead. For a moment, it felt like the city was breathing again. But of course, peace in Los Angeles never lasts too long. One night, another mysterious video dropped. This one showed two of the old affiliates arguing outside a parking lot. Voices raised, tempers flaring. One said, "You think he changing for real? Man, he trying to rewrite history." The other replied, "Bro, maybe let him. At least he trying to do something." It wasn't a big moment, just a short blurry clip. But it reminded everyone that healing ain't clean. It's messy. Some people forgive, others stay stuck. The city was learning that in real time. And while all this was happening, rumors started that Big U had been working on something bigger, a documentary maybe, or a foundation named after his son. One of his close associates told a blogger, he wants to make sure his son's pain becomes somebody else's prevention. It's crazy how a few words, said in a moment of pain, could ripple through an entire community. Those last words, "Tell my pops I ain't mad. Tell him I just couldn't carry it no more," became a mantra for every young man trying to escape the expectations that crushed them. News outlets started calling it the cycle speech. Schools started quoting it in youth programs. Even preachers in Sunday services were referencing it in sermons about forgiveness. Somehow, what started as tragedy had become testimony. And yet, there was still one person who hadn't spoken, Nipsey's brother. People wanted to know what he thought about all this, since his camp was the one that leaked the clip in the first place. And when he finally spoke, it flipped the story once again. It was early morning when Nipsey's brother finally broke his silence. No podcast, no press conference, no interview. Just an Instagram live, grainy and raw, the kind where you can tell the person didn't plan what they were about to say. He started off quiet, staring into the camera for a few seconds before speaking. "Everybody keep asking why we put that clip out," he said. But it wasn't about views. It was about truth, because sometimes truth gotta hurt before it heal. The live went on for almost an hour. He talked about how the city been running in circles, how pain gets recycled instead of resolved. And then he said something that made the whole chat freeze. That boy told his pops what half these sons too scared to say. He said he couldn't carry it no more. That's not weakness, that's clarity. And if we don't learn from that, we're gonna keep losing our sons to silence. You could tell the emotion in his voice wasn't for cameras. It was real. He wasn't attacking Big U. He was trying to bridge something. "I ain't against that man," he said. "I'm against the curse we all stuck in. Same pain, different generation." The comments section filled up fast. Some folks were saying respect. Others said he was trying to stir things again. But people couldn't deny one thing. His words hit like a mirror. By the end of that week, clips from his live were all over social media. You could hear his voice echoing. He ain't died just to make people sad. He died to make people see. Even people who usually stayed quiet started posting. Rappers, athletes, activists, all reflecting on the idea of weight, legacy, and the cost of silence. And that's when something unexpected happened. For the first time in years, Big U and Nipsey's brother showed up in the same place, unannounced. A youth basketball tournament at a rec center off Slauson. No cameras, no entourage, just two men sitting courtside, watching kids play. The photo leaked a few hours later and it didn't need a caption. You could see the peace in it, the way pain can mellow into perspective. People online called it the full circle moment. News outlets ran stories saying Los Angeles might finally be healing from years of internal wounds. The same streets that once thrived on division were starting to whisper unity again. But what really touched people came a few weeks later. A mural appeared on a wall near Crenshaw. It showed three faces, Nipsey, Big U's son, and Big U himself, all connected by a single quote written underneath. "We ain't mad. We just tired of carrying it." That mural became a landmark overnight. People brought candles, flowers, even letters. One message written in black ink stood out. "Our fathers fight so we can survive. We forgive them so we can live." Meanwhile, Big U kept moving quietly. He turned that pain into purpose, launching a program for young men who lost their fathers to the system or the streets. It was called Carry Less. The tagline was simple: "You don't gotta hold it alone." People said it was the first time they saw him smile in months. At one of the meetings, a young man stood up and asked him, "Do you ever think your son forgave you?" Big U paused for a long time before answering. "Yeah," he said. "He forgave me before I forgave myself." That quote spread like wildfire. It ended up on shirts, documentaries, even on street art around the city. His story, once full of tension, became a lesson about transformation, about how pain don't disappear. It just gets reshaped into something that teaches others how to move different. In one interview months later, A journalist asked Big U if he ever regretted how things unfolded. He looked down, then said, "Regret don't bring peace. Understanding does. My son showed me that. I was trying to make him my reflection when he was already lighting his own path." By that time, even the Nipsey affiliates had changed their tone. Ol Boogie, who had been one of the most vocal critics, went on record saying, "I ain't gonna lie, I misread him. I thought he was trying to hide behind pain, but now I see he's building from it. Maybe that's what leadership looked like." And in a way, that's what this whole story became. A reminder of how fragile legacy really is. How fathers and sons can love each other and still be lost in translation. How the streets raise boys to be warriors, then punish them for being tired. It wasn't about who was right or wrong anymore. It was about what they left behind. The message that traveled farther than any diss, any headline, any rumor. In the end, those last words, "Tell my pops I ain't mad. Tell him I just couldn't carry it no more," became bigger than the tragedy. They became a code, a signal to the world that healing starts when honesty finally gets louder than pride. And if you walk through Los Angeles today, you'll still see that mural on the wall. You'll see people stop, look up, and go quiet for a second. Not out of sadness, but out of understanding. Because what started as pain turned into prophecy. And what began as a son's final message became a city's first step toward forgiveness. So now that you heard it all, you tell me, what does this story really mean to you? Was it just another tragedy in a city that's seen too many? Or was it a wake-up call about what happens when pride becomes heavier than love? Because when Big U's son said, "I just couldn't carry it no more," he wasn't just talking to his father. He was talking to every man raised to swallow his pain and call it strength. Think about it. How many fathers and sons been caught in that same silence? How many people out here trying to live up to a legacy that don't even fit them anymore? This story ain't just about the streets. It's about family, about how we inherit trauma like property, how we wear pressure like armor, and how breaking down don't mean you weak. It mean you human. And maybe that's the real message behind all this. Forgiveness ain't a headline, it's a habit. And sometimes, peace don't come from winning. It comes from understanding. Big U lost his son, but he gained a mission. And through that pain, the city learned something bigger than loyalty or politics. It learned how to listen. So I gotta ask you, what would you have done in his shoes? Could you forgive yourself if it was you? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation bigger than one man, bigger than one name. And before you go, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Stories like this ain't just entertainment. They're reminders of what it costs to grow, to change, to heal. Stay tapped in, because the next chapter of this story might already be unfolding right now. This is your host signing off. Stay real, stay grounded, and remember, the heaviest thing a man can carry is silence. The thing a man can carry is silence.